I inherited a 3,200-acre lake. HOA profited for years until I shut it down. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today's story is filled with unexpected twists, powerful emotions, and a shocking truth that no one saw coming. What begins as an ordinary situation will quickly turn into a dramatic confrontation, forcing the characters to make choices that could change their lives forever. Make sure you stay with us until the very end, because the final outcome may completely surprise you. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our latest stories. Your support helps us continue creating more emotional, meaningful, and unforgettable videos for you. We would also love to hear from you. What time is it where you are watching right now, and which city or country are you watching from? Please share your answer in the comments below. It is always wonderful to see viewers joining us from different parts of the world. Thank you for being here. Now, let us begin today's story. Nobody moves another boat, I said, and the microphone carried my voice across 3,200 acres of water. The music died first. Then the engines. One by one, the deep growl of speedboats and fishing rigs faded until the only sound left was lake water tapping against aluminum docks. I stood at the entrance to Blackwater Lake with an old brass key in one hand and a certified deed in the other. Behind me, Sheriff Cole Harlan stepped out of his cruiser while two county inspectors unrolled yellow closure tape across the marina gate. Across the parking lot, Lorraine Beckett froze beneath a white festival tent, one hand still resting on a credit card reader. She had been charging $75 per vehicle, $40 per boat, and another $20 for what her signs called a shoreline preservation fee. Hundreds of families filled the grounds. Coolers sat open on tailgates. Children held fishing poles. The smell of grilled burgers, sunscreen, gasoline, and hot asphalt hung over the lake like a heavy curtain. Lorraine pushed through the crowd in a spotless white pantsuit, her heels striking the pavement like a judge's gavel. "You cannot shut down our lake," she snapped. Her voice was sweet enough for a church fundraiser, but her fingers had turned white around the card reader. I looked past her at the 40-foot banner stretched between two poles, Beckett Shores Annual Lake Festival. The name would have made my grandfather laugh. Walter Whitmore had built the original spillway with his own hands in 1968. He had cleared the shoreline, filed the water rights documents, and paid taxes on every submerged acre for more than 50 years. Lorraine had simply changed the signs and started collecting money. "It isn't your lake," I said. A nervous murmur moved through the crowd. Lorraine smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. "Our association has managed this property for 17 years. You appeared 6 weeks ago with some family story and a stack of outdated papers." She lifted the card reader as if it were proof of ownership. That little machine chirped again. Another payment had cleared. I heard Naomi Pierce, my attorney, quietly say, "That's one more." Lorraine didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. 6 weeks earlier, this had been a property dispute. That morning, after Lorraine ignored a signed cease and desist order and sold another 1,000 festival tickets, it became evidence. Sheriff Harlan walked toward the main office. The county inspectors headed for the fuel pumps and rental docks. Lorraine stepped in front of me, expensive perfume cutting through the smell of lake water and exhaust. "Do you have any idea how much this event brings into our community?" she whispered. I folded the deed along its worn crease. "I know exactly how much it brings in." Her expression shifted. "Just slightly. And I know where the money goes." The breeze lifted the corner of the festival banner. Somewhere across the lake, a boy bell rang once. Lorraine looked toward her husband, Martin, who was already backing away from the marina office. That was the moment she finally understood. I had not come to argue over access. I had come to close the business they had built on stolen water. 6 weeks earlier, I was standing in a probate attorney's office in Cedar Ridge, staring at a map so large it covered half the conference table. The paper smelled faintly of dust and old ink. Blue survey lines twisted across it like veins, surrounding a wide shape labeled Blackwater Lake. I had expected to inherit my grandfather's cabin, maybe the rusted fishing boat he refused to sell, and a few acres of shoreline where I spent summers learning how to read clouds. I had not expected 3,200 acres of water, the land beneath it, the spillway, 3 access roads, and nearly 6 miles of wooded shoreline. "My name is Caleb Whitmore." I was 39 years old, a hydraulic engineer who had spent most of my career inspecting dams, drainage systems, and flood control projects across 3 states. Water was never just scenery to me. It had weight, direction, memory. My grandfather Walter understood that before I did. He could stand beside a quiet creek and tell you where it would rise after 2 inches of rain. He built the original spillway in 1968, back when the surrounding land was cattle pasture and the nearest paved road ended 12 miles away. Every summer, he brought me into the maintenance shed before sunrise. The metal door always stuck in humid weather, and he would hand me an old brass key attached to a leather loop. He taught me to check the gate gears, clear driftwood from the intake, and listen for changes in the water. He said a lake always tells you when something is wrong. You just have to stop talking long enough to hear it. After college, I left Cedar Ridge. Work became airports, hotel rooms, inspection reports, and phone calls I kept promising to return. Walter never complained. He mailed me photographs instead. Fog over the eastern cove. Fresh paint on the boathouse. A heron standing on the old dock. His last letter arrived 3 months before he died. It contained only the brass key and 1 sentence written in his narrow block handwriting. Keep the water honest. I did not understand what he meant until the probate attorney, Naomi Pierce, slid a second folder toward me. Inside were tax records showing Walter had paid every assessment on the lake until the day he died. Beneath them sat recent photographs taken by the estate appraiser. New docks, rental cabins, fuel pumps, a gated marina, a restaurant with outdoor seating. At the center of everything stood a polished wooden sign that read Beckett Shores, Private Community Lake. I felt the edge of the brass key press into my palm. Naomi watched me carefully. She had silver-framed glasses, a calm voice, and the expression of someone who never placed a document on a table without knowing exactly what it could do. She told me the Beckett Shores Homeowners Association had been operating commercial activities around the lake for years. Boat rentals, fishing permits, event fees, shoreline memberships, and seasonal passes. According to their public filings, they claimed long-term management authority. According to Walter's deed, they owned none of it. I looked again at the photographs. Families were smiling beside rented pontoons. Cars lined up at a toll booth. A white festival banner stretched across the marina entrance. What bothered me most was not that strangers were using the lake. Walter had always welcomed people who respected the land. It was the cash register mounted beside the gate. Someone had turned his generosity into a business. Naomi closed the folder and said, very quietly, that before I confronted anyone, I needed to see how deep it went. Outside, summer rain tapped against the office windows. I could almost hear Walter's voice beneath it. Keep the water honest. I slipped the brass key into my pocket and drove toward the lake. The road into Blackwater Lake had changed so much that I drove past it twice. The gravel turnoff I remembered was gone, replaced by a stone entrance with black iron gates and a guard booth painted the same polished grey as the luxury homes beyond it. Fresh mulch, trimmed hedges, matching flags, and a bronze sign reading Beckett Shores made the place look less like a lake community and more like a private resort. I rolled down my window and caught the smell of pine needles, hot pavement, and gasoline drifting from the marina. A young man in a tan uniform stepped out of the booth with a tablet in his hand. He asked for my resident sticker. I told him I was there to inspect the lake. His eyes moved from my dusty pickup to my work boots, then back to the screen. He said lake access was limited to members and approved guests. I almost laughed. Instead, I gave him my name. He typed it in, frowned, and made a phone call. Less than 2 minutes later, a white sport utility vehicle swept around the corner and stopped beside the gate. Lorraine Beckett stepped out before the engine fully shut off. She wore cream-colored slacks, a pale blue blouse, and sunglasses large enough to reflect my entire truck. Her smile arrived first. Warm, practiced, empty. She introduced herself as president of the Beckett Shores Homeowners Association and said she had heard about Walter's passing. The sympathy lasted exactly 1 sentence. Then she asked what I wanted. I told her I had inherited the lake and needed access to inspect the spillway, shoreline, and control structures. Her smile tightened. She said there must be some confusion. According to the association, Walter had transferred management authority years ago, and the lake had become part of the community's shared amenities. I asked to see the agreement. Lorraine tapped one manicured finger against her sunglasses and said their attorney handled those records. Then she added that ownership was complicated when a community had invested millions of dollars in improvements. The word ownership sounded strange in her mouth, like something she believed could be created by repetition. She offered to schedule a meeting the following month. I told her the dam inspection could not wait. That was when the sweetness left her voice. She said unauthorized entry would be treated as trespassing. I looked through the gate. Beyond the rows of houses, I could see bright rental pontoons crossing the water. A digital sign near the marina advertised weekend packages, guided fishing trips, and sunset dinner cruises. Each boat moved over land my family still paid taxes on. I asked Lorraine whether the association charged for those services. She gave me a small shrug and said the revenue supported maintenance. I asked where the financial reports were filed. Her jaw shifted. Barely. But I saw it. She stepped closer to my window, and the scent of expensive perfume pushed through the gasoline and summer heat. She told me people had built their lives around that lake and warned me not to arrive with old papers and create unnecessary fear. I kept my voice level. I said I only wanted the records. Lorraine leaned back and smiled again. She said Walter understood how things worked there. Before I could answer, she turned to the guard and told him not to open the gate. Then she drove away. I sat there listening to the soft electronic hum of the gate motor and the distant buzz of boat engines. The brass key felt heavy in my pocket. Walter had never transferred anything. He had tolerated people. He had shared access. He had trusted neighbors. Lorraine had taken that trust, put a price tag on it, and hired security to keep his own family out. I backed away from the gate, parked half a mile down the county road, and walked through the woods to the old northern shoreline. The path was overgrown, but I still knew every turn. When the trees opened, I saw the marina across the water, crowded and gleaming. Then I saw something else. A small wooden building near the western cove, half hidden behind new storage sheds. The old dam house was still standing. And unlike the front gate, its lock had been waiting for my key. The dam house stood behind a leaning chain-link fence, its cedar siding bleached silver by years of sun. Weeds brushed against my jeans as I crossed the narrow service path. Somewhere below, water moved through the spillway with a low, steady rush. The sound had not changed since I was 12. Neither had the smell inside the building when the brass key turned and the door finally opened. Damp wood. Machine oil. Rust. My grandfather's world, sealed in darkness. I found the old breaker panel, flipped the main switch, and watched a row of yellow bulbs flicker awake. Dust floated through the light. The control wheel was still mounted above the floor grate, but someone had wrapped it in a new steel cable and attached a commercial lock. A laminated notice hung from the chain. Beckett Shaw's Operations Department. Authorized personnel only. I took photographs before touching anything. Then I called Naomi. She answered on the second ring. I told her Lorraine had denied me access and that the association had installed equipment inside the dam house. Naomi went quiet for a moment, then told me to document every surface, label, and serial number. She said not to remove the lock. Not yet. That word mattered. I spent the next hour moving through the building with my phone camera and an old flashlight from the truck. The association had added a wireless water level monitor, 2 electrical pumps, and a control box connected to the marina. None of it carried a county inspection sticker. A cable ran through the back wall toward the eastern cove. I followed it outside and discovered a hidden intake line feeding the resort's irrigation system. They were using lake water to keep hundreds of acres of lawns bright green through the hottest part of summer. I photographed the meter. It showed more than 48 million gallons drawn since installation. By sunset, Naomi was standing beside me in work shoes she clearly did not enjoy wearing. She studied the meter, the unpermitted wiring, and the locked control wheel without saying much. Then she opened her briefcase and showed me copies of Beckett Shaw's financial disclosures. The association reported almost no revenue from lake operations. Less than $12,000 the previous year. That number made no sense. I had watched a steady line of vehicles enter the marina all afternoon. Naomi agreed. She said if the money was not appearing in the association records, it was going somewhere else. The next morning, I returned through the public boat launch 3 miles north of the development. I paid $40 for a day pass under a shortened version of my name and kept the receipt. The clerk never asked whether I lived in the neighborhood. He only pointed toward a list of upgrades. $85 for a fishing package. $160 for a pontoon rental. $250 for reserved shoreline seating during holiday weekends. The cash register chimed every few seconds. I spent the day moving quietly through the marina, buying the cheapest services they offered and collecting every receipt. The company name printed at the bottom was not Beckett Shores Homeowners Association. It was Lakefront Community Services, Limited Liability Company. I searched the state business registry from my truck. The registered manager was Martin Beckett, Lorraine's husband. The address matched a private office behind the marina restaurant. By late afternoon, I had 6 receipts, 3 rate sheets, photographs of 2 fuel pumps, and a brochure advertising corporate retreats for up to 400 guests. Then I met Martha Ellison. Her bait shop sat beyond the main docks in a faded green building that looked older than everything around it. She watched me studying the receipts and asked whether I was an auditor. I told her my name. The paper cup in her hand stopped halfway to her mouth. She locked the front door, turned the sign to closed, and led me into the back room. The place smelled like coffee, cedar shavings, and live minnows. Martha opened a metal file cabinet and pulled out a stack of invoices tied with kitchen string. Lorraine had charged her shoreline access fees, marketing fees, security fees, and a percentage of every sale. When Martha refused to increase the payment, the association restricted customer parking and removed her sign from the main road. She pointed to the account number printed on the invoices. It matched the receipts in my pocket. Martha looked toward the window before lowering her voice. She said Lorraine had been collecting money from the lake for 17 years, and anyone who questioned it lost access, customers, or both. Then she handed me an envelope postmarked 9 years earlier. My grandfather's name was written across the return address. Lorraine's signature was on the delivery confirmation. Whatever was inside, she could never claim she had not received it. The envelope was already open, but the paper inside had been folded so many times the creases felt like cloth beneath my fingers. Walter had written the letter in blue ink, each line straight and deliberate. He reminded Lorraine that the original access agreement allowed local residents to use the shoreline without charge, but it prohibited commercial rentals, admission fees, private concessions, and any transfer of water rights. He listed the violations he had personally observed. Paid fishing passes. Marina construction. Irrigation withdrawals. A company operating under Martin Beckett's name. At the bottom, Walter gave the association 30 days to stop collecting money and provide complete financial records. Lorraine's signature appeared on the certified delivery card. The date was 9 years earlier. I read the final sentence twice. Continued commercial use will terminate all permission to access the lake. Martha watched my face from across the small table. The refrigerator compressor rattled behind her, and water bubbled softly in the minnow tanks. She said Walter came into the shop a week after sending the letter. He expected Lorraine to call. She never did. Instead, the association announced that Walter had approved a new community partnership. Martha had known it sounded wrong, but by then Lorraine controlled the marina, the parking lots, and every public meeting. Naomi photographed each page and sealed the original in an evidence sleeve. She told me the letter proved notice, but not yet the full chain of fraud. Lorraine could still argue that Walter later changed his mind or signed another agreement. We needed records, witnesses, and the original access contract. I thought the certified letter would force Lorraine to cooperate. I was wrong. 3 nights later, I walked into the Beckett Shores clubhouse for the monthly association meeting. The room smelled of lemon cleaner, burnt coffee, and fresh printer toner. Every chair was filled. Lorraine had made sure of that. A large photograph of the lake covered the wall behind her, with the words "Our Water, Our Future" printed across the bottom. Before I could speak, she introduced me as Walter Whitmore's estranged grandson. The word estranged moved through the room like smoke. She told the residents I planned to close their docks, cancel youth fishing programs, and restrict emergency water access. None of it was true. When I stepped toward the microphone, people were already shaking their heads. I explained the deed, the tax records, and the commercial restrictions. Lorraine held up a thick binder and said the association had maintained the lake openly for 17 years. She claimed that long-term investment created permanent community rights. Then Martin displayed slides showing landscaping costs, dock repairs, security patrols, and property values. He never showed revenue. I asked why payments went to his private company. The projector fan hummed in the silence. Lorraine answered that Lakefront Community Services was an approved vendor. I asked whether the association had voted on the contract. She said the board had acted under emergency authority. I asked to see the minutes. Her smile hardened. Then she turned the room against me. She asked how many families would lose access if one man decided an inheritance mattered more than a community. Hands rose. Voices followed. An older resident said his grandchildren learned to swim there. A woman near the front accused me of trying to raise fees. Someone in the back shouted that Walter had wanted the lake shared. I told them sharing was not the same as selling. Lorraine leaned toward her microphone and said, very softly, that ownership meant little when a community had accepted something long enough. The board voted to reject my request for records. Before midnight, their attorney filed for temporary protection of existing lake operations. The county granted a short administrative hold while the dispute was reviewed. By morning, orange flyers covered my truck. Keep Blackwater open. Return the lake to the people. I peeled one from the windshield and felt damp paper tear beneath my thumb. Lorraine had done exactly what Naomi warned she would do. She had turned theft into tradition, profit into public service, and me into the outsider trying to take something away. But the louder she made the argument, the more certain I became that the missing records mattered. Honest organizations show their books. Lorraine was hiding hers behind a crowd. Rain started just after midnight, tapping against the roof of Walter's old cabin in slow, uneven bursts. I sat at the kitchen table with the brass key, the certified letter, and 3 county maps spread beneath a yellow lamp. Every road around the lake had been redrawn over the years. New parcel lines. New easements. New labels. But the original service corridor to the dam house was still marked in black ink, running across land that had never belonged to Beckett Shores. I traced it with my finger until I reached a note written beside the western cove. Access subject to revocation upon commercial use. The handwriting was not Walter's. It came from the county surveyor who filed the map in 1971. At sunrise, Naomi arrived with coffee and a portable scanner. The smell of wet cedar followed her through the door. She reviewed the map, then compared it with the association's filing. Lorraine had submitted a newer version to the county, one that showed the service corridor as common property. The survey number in the corner did not match any record in the county archive. Naomi said the map was either an error or a fabrication. Neither possibility helped Lorraine. We drove to the records office before it opened. The building sat behind the courthouse, all brick walls and humming fluorescent lights. A clerk named Samuel Price brought us boxes from the 70s, each one coated in grey dust. For 4 hours, we searched deeds, easements, water permits, and correspondence. My eyes burned from old paper and stale air. Then Naomi found a reference to the original lake access agreement. The document itself had been transferred to a maintenance file decades earlier. That file was missing. Samuel checked the withdrawal log and frowned. The last person to request it was Lorraine Beckett, 9 years ago, 3 days after she signed for Walter's warning letter. She never returned it. Naomi asked for a certified copy of the log. Samuel printed it, stamped it, and slid it across the counter. The sound of that stamp landing on paper felt heavier than it should have. By late afternoon, we had proof Lorraine received Walter's notice and removed the only county file containing the limits of her authority. But we still did not know where the money went or how much had been collected. That answer came from a man named Douglas Crane. He called Naomi from a blocked number and asked to meet at a roadside diner 20 miles east of Cedar Ridge. He had served as Beckett Shores treasurer for 6 years before Lorraine removed him from the board. When I walked into the diner, he was sitting alone beneath a flickering sign, stirring coffee he had not touched. He looked like a man who had spent years waiting for someone to ask the right question. Douglas carried a worn leather briefcase. Inside were copies of monthly revenue reports, vendor contracts, bank transfers, and board minutes Lorraine claimed did not exist. He had taken them before losing access to the association office. The numbers turned my stomach cold. In the previous year alone, lake operations brought in more than $1.8 million. Less than 12,000 appeared in official association disclosures. The rest moved through Lakefront Community Services, then into 2 other companies controlled by Martin. Douglas showed us one contract after another. Dock rentals, fuel sales, wedding events, corporate retreats, irrigation fees charged to homeowners. Lorraine signed every approval under Emergency Management Authority. No public vote. No competitive bids. No legal permission from Walter. Douglas said he confronted her 9 years earlier, after finding the certified letter in a board packet. Lorraine told him Walter was old, isolated, and unlikely to challenge them. She said by the time his family understood what had happened, the community would be too dependent on the lake to reverse it. Then Douglas handed me a small storage key attached to a red plastic tag. He had kept the original board packet in a rented locker outside town. Inside it, he said, was a copy of the missing access agreement. We reached the storage facility before dark. The metal door rattled upward, releasing the smell of cardboard and dry dust. On top of a sealed archive box sat a folder marked Blackwater Lake. Naomi opened it carefully. The original agreement was there. So was an internal memorandum signed by Lorraine. It stated that commercial use would terminate all access rights immediately. At the bottom, in her own handwriting, she had written 4 words. Do not circulate to residents. Naomi read the handwritten note twice, then placed the memorandum into a clear evidence sleeve. The storage unit felt suddenly smaller. Dry cardboard pressed against my shoulder. Dust hung in the beam of her flashlight. Douglas stood near the open door, staring toward the parking lot as if Lorraine might appear between the rows of metal buildings. Naomi said we finally had what mattered most. Not just proof that Lorraine knew the limits of the agreement, but proof that she had intentionally hidden them. That changed everything. Until that moment, Lorraine could claim confusion, bad legal advice, or 17 years of careless management. The note removed every excuse. She understood the rules. She understood the consequences. She chose the money anyway. I wanted to take the folder straight to the county and demand an immediate shutdown. Naomi stopped me. She said Lorraine had spent years building layers around herself. Attorneys, vendors, residents who believed the lake belonged to them. If we moved too early, she would ask for another temporary order, bury us in hearings, and warn Martin to move the money. We needed her to make one final mistake in public, after receiving direct legal notice from me. That was how we would turn a complicated ownership dispute into deliberate commercial trespass. The plan was simple enough to fit on one page. First, Naomi prepared a formal revocation of every access privilege under the original agreement. It listed the marina, rental docks, fuel pumps, event grounds, irrigation intake, and all commercial roads crossing Whitmore property. Second, we sent copies to the county, the association attorney, the marina insurer, the state boating office, and the bank processing lakefront community services payments. Third, we required Lorraine to stop all sales within 48 hours. The annual lake festival was scheduled for the following weekend. More than 1,000 tickets had already been sold. Naomi believed any reasonable person would cancel. I knew Lorraine would not. We delivered the notice by certified courier during a board meeting. I watched from across the parking lot as Lorraine signed the electronic pad. The courier handed her the envelope. She opened it under the clubhouse lights, read the first page, and walked directly into Martin's office. Less than an hour later, the festival website changed. Instead of cancelling, they added a banner that said operations would continue as scheduled despite outside interference. I took a screenshot. The next morning, Lorraine sent residents an email calling my notice legally meaningless. She promised that no single heir could disrupt a community tradition. By noon, the marina offered discounted family passes. By sunset, every remaining boat slip was booked. Naomi called me from her office and said Lorraine was now selling access after written revocation. Each transaction created a timestamp, a payment record, and another piece of evidence. I spent the next 3 days doing nothing visible. That was the hardest part. I watched trucks deliver folding tables, portable lights, and cases of bottled drinks. I watched maintenance crews hang the white festival banner across the entrance. I watched Martin test the fuel pumps and Lorraine rehearse beside the stage. They thought my silence meant retreat. In reality, Naomi was coordinating with Sheriff Cole Harlan, county inspectors, the marina insurer, and the state licensing office. Douglas signed a sworn statement. Martha copied every invoice she had received. Samuel Price certified the missing file log from the records office. I inspected the private access road and confirmed that the marina entrance, the service lane, and the main launch ramp all crossed land included in my deed. The night before the festival, I returned to the dam house. Rainwater ticked from the roof into a rusted gutter. I unlocked the original door with Walter's brass key and stood beside the chained control wheel. I did not touch the association's lock. I only photographed it one last time. Walter had taught me that pressure becomes dangerous when people ignore where it is building. Lorraine had spent 17 years doing exactly that. By morning, she would have a full marina, hundreds of witnesses, and nowhere left to hide the money. I slipped the key back into my pocket and listened to the water moving beneath the floor. The lake was telling me something was about to change. By 9 in the morning, the marina parking lot was full. Families carried coolers toward the docks. Children dragged fishing poles across the pavement. Music rolled from the festival stage, and the smell of grilled onions mixed with gasoline, sunscreen, and lake water warming under the sun. Lorraine stood beneath the white entrance tent in a cream jacket, greeting people as if nothing had changed. Martin worked beside her with 2 credit card readers, processing payments faster than the volunteers could hand out wristbands. I watched from my truck at the edge of the property while Naomi checked her phone. Every sale after the deadline appeared in the payment records almost immediately. $40. $75. $160. Each electronic receipt carried the same company name and another timestamp proving they had ignored the notice. At 10:15, Naomi nodded. That was the signal. I drove to the gate and parked in front of the marina entrance. The music kept playing until I stepped onto the small platform beside the ticket tent and reached for the microphone. Lorraine saw me and started moving before I said a word. I told everyone no additional boats would leave the docks. My voice traveled across the water, clear enough to reach the restaurant patio and the rental line. The music stopped. Engines idled for a few seconds, then faded one after another. Lorraine pushed through the crowd and demanded that security remove me. The security supervisor looked past her toward Sheriff Cole Harlan, who had just stepped from his cruiser with 2 deputies and a county official. No one touched me. Naomi joined us carrying a black document case. She handed Lorraine the county order confirming suspension of all commercial activity on the lake pending investigation. Lorraine barely looked at it. She said the association had a temporary right to continue operations. Naomi replied that the earlier hold protected ordinary community access, not commercial sales made after formal revocation. Then the marina insurer arrived. He carried a cancellation notice based on undisclosed ownership disputes, unpermitted fuel service, and unauthorized control equipment inside the dam house. Without coverage, no rental boat could legally leave the dock. Martin stopped scanning cards. His face lost color when 2 state licensing officers walked toward the fuel pumps. One placed an out-of-service cover over the first nozzle. The other photographed the meter. At the main office, Sheriff Harlan served a preservation order for financial records and payment devices. The soft chirp of the card reader sounded again as one final transaction cleared. Naomi looked at me. One more. Lorraine heard her this time. She turned toward Martin, then toward the marina office, where a deputy was sealing the door. I laid the certified deed on the ticket table, followed by the original access agreement, Walter's warning letter, the delivery receipt bearing Lorraine's signature, and her handwritten memorandum. Do not circulate to residents. The crowd went silent. Lorraine stared at the words as if they had appeared by themselves. I explained that Walter had allowed free local access, never commercial use. I explained that every permission ended the moment the association started charging money. Then Douglas Crane stepped forward carrying copies of the hidden financial reports. Martha stood beside him with 17 years of invoices. Martin tried to leave through the service lane, but a county inspector informed him that the road was closed because it crossed private Whitmore property. No one shouted. No one needed to. The paperwork did all the work. The festival banner snapped in the breeze above us while officials shut down the rental desk, the fuel station, the irrigation intake, and the event office. Lorraine had spent years telling people she owned the lake because she controlled the gate. That morning, she learned the gate, the road beneath it, and the water beyond it had never belonged to her. The lake stayed closed for 23 days. During that time, the marina sat quiet beneath the August sun. Rental pontoons remained tied to the docks. The fuel pumps wore red inspection covers. The The festival banner disappeared, leaving 2 empty poles above the entrance. Without engines and loudspeakers, I could hear the sound Walter had taught me to notice years ago. Water touching wood. Wind moving through pine branches. A buoy bell answering from the eastern cove. The investigation moved faster than Lorraine expected. Bank records showed that Lakefront Community Services had collected more than $14 million over 17 years. Large portions of that money had been transferred into companies controlled by Martin, while the Homeowners Association carried the maintenance costs. Residents had paid twice. Once through their monthly dues, and again through lake fees that were never legally authorized. The county recovered the missing maintenance file from a locked cabinet in Martin's office. Walter's original agreement was inside, along with notes showing Lorraine had discussed ways to claim permanent access without purchasing the property. Her handwritten memorandum became the center of every hearing. Do not circulate to residents. For words destroyed 17 years of excuses. Lorraine resigned before the board could remove her. Martin lost every operating contract connected to the lake. Their company accounts were frozen while the court calculated refunds, unpaid access fees, and damages. The Homeowners Association was placed under independent financial supervision. No one celebrated in the courtroom. Most residents looked stunned. They had believed Lorraine because she controlled the meetings, the newsletters, and the gate. When people hear the same lie for long enough, it begins to sound like community history. I could have kept the entire lake closed. The deed gave me that right. I could have sold private memberships, raised the shoreline fees, or turned the Western Cove into another luxury marina. That would have made me profitable. It would not have made me right. Walter never wanted the water hidden behind a wall. He wanted it respected. With Naomi's help, I created the Whitmore Lake Conservation Trust. Local families received free shoreline access permits. Fishing passes cost only enough to support water testing, rescue equipment, and dock repairs. Commercial operators had to compete through public bids, carry proper insurance, and publish every payment. A portion of the recovered money refunded residents and small businesses that Lorraine had overcharged. Martha reopened her bait shop near the public launch. On her first morning back, the smell of coffee and cedar shavings drifted across the dock while children lined up for worms and bobbers. Douglas joined the new oversight board, although he refused the title of treasurer. He said one lifetime of financial reports was enough. We removed the irrigation pipe that had drawn millions of gallons without authorization. We repaired the dam house wiring, replaced the commercial lock, and restored the old control wheel. I hung Walter's brass key on its original hook beside the door. At the marina entrance, workers lowered the Beckett Shores sign onto a flatbed truck. Beneath it, the stone pillar showed a clean rectangle where the false name had blocked the sun. The new sign was smaller. Whitmore Lake. Public access by permission, not by theft. On opening morning, I stood beside the water before sunrise. Mist floated over the cove, turning the surface silver. The first truck rolled slowly down the restored access road. Martha waved from the passenger seat. Behind her came families, fishermen, and neighbors who had finally seen the records for themselves. No toll booth stopped them. No private company scanned their cards. The gate opened with a quiet electric hum. Walter once told me that water always finds the truth of the land beneath it. Lorraine believed control came from signs, fees, and people being too afraid to ask questions. She was wrong. Real ownership did not need to shout. It waited in deeds, receipts, maps, and a brass key until the right moment arrived. Justice was never the loudest thing on that lake. It was simply the one thing Lorraine could not keep underwater forever.